It's time for Dr. Rademaker's prescription for transformation. Let's tap into your own authentic genius and live the life you desire.
You are now listening to
Join Dr. Rademaker for an enlightened conversation about our brain intelligence, our body intelligence, and our energy intelligence. And now, here's your host, Dr. Bart Rademaker.
The primary goals that I have for this series is really tapping into that collective wisdom to create the space for generative collaboration, experiences, their magic, their stories, their solutions. Because truly, life is just a collection of, this is what this is all about, helping you find out what it is that you need to know so that you can overcome the particular challenges. And I think most people just have a misconception of money. People think money is a real thing when it actually is not. It's going to a whole different dimension, into the digital world, into cryptocurrency. Like, okay, what is that? Don't know what it's really all about. There's a lot of fear around this and a lot of confusion and potentially conspiracy world for quite some time. But here's what's really interesting. She has a different dimension to her life that really balances.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So share with me this, because we're going to talk about cryptocurrency, how it actually works, how it actually started, how people can get involved, and the magnificent work that you're doing in this field. But I'd like to start off with something.
Yes, and this is the thing that I really like to talk about because so many people forget that. Energy. So, the only reason people thought gold was worth anything is because they believed it came a couple of years ago. And I'll send it to you later. But they were walking around Manhattan back in 2017 offering either a brick of gold or Bitcoin in exchange for services. What were they going to do with the gold brick?
Right. Wow.
So yeah, I mean, we forget that money starts copper to represent the exchange of energy. So yeah, it's fast. And it started in 2008 when the stock markets crashed with the housing crisis because of what went on in Wall Street, and the kind of shady deals that went down that screwed the world over. As a response, maybe not a response, but like defiance to that, because the blockchain, I like to say, is the concept of many witnesses to every financial transaction. Mm-hmm. So that hold the record or the ledger of the blockchain.
Right.
And on the ledger, you can see every transaction ever for cryptocurrency. That I gave you $2 for the coffee.
Right.
Whatever amount of Bitcoin. And if there's like an attempt at a faulty transaction. Yeah, so it's like, what's really cool too is that like Bitcoin has a finite amount, so you can't really have inflation.
So was this basically a consortium of people coming together and deciding, hey, let's do this, or what?
It's either one person were obviously knew like what would happen with this, and here we are 10 years later. And I mean, nobody really knows. It's the one of the greatest mysteries
of all time. Wow. Okay.
I don't think we'll ever know.
So how does cryptocurrency then work? So basically, you're saying that you have thousands of computers monitoring every transaction.
Number of places to buy it now, depending on where you live in the world. The biggest place to buy Bitcoin in the world is Coinbase.com, and but I like Coinbase for people who've never bought it before because it's kind of like the PayPal of crypto. It's more of a trading site and very confusing for a lot of people. So
we can use it in one of two ways then. More as the convenience as far as transactions are concerned, and the other way is for investment. Would that be correct?
Yeah, and it's really cool because where you can spend your Bitcoin directly. So I could go to the store and pay for food with my Bitcoin card from Visa, and even the Cash App, which is an option in. Apple is adding in a crypto option as well. it's just like, it's such a no-brainer. I mean, it's been a no-brainer for me for years, but like when you have Apple adding on a crypto function to Apple Wallet, you know you need to pay attention. And
Right. You know, the meaning behind all this, because in 2008 with the crash, and so this was in essence the markets, and this is in essence a way to get away from that manipulation. Is that?
well, I mean, it's a problem in the world right now, and has been for a while. So, I mean, right? So taking it into something a bit more granular, like there's a cryptocurrency called Ripple. A lot of them are actually software platforms and currency, which is a new concept in the world, right? So, millions and millions of dollars within 8 minutes. Now, what happens is Ripple takes out the middlemen in the banking. In America, when you send money with the SWIFT system from one country to another, it takes a lot of time and it's expensive. It's like you send like $2,000 worth of the currency is like, you know, it can cost like $1 to $5.
And it's the same denomination.
Place of the people in between that's verifying that the amount is what it is. So, I mean, it's massive, like, of funds and transfers. They go back and forth between the banks. It's like this manual process, and it's like, why the heck is that still happening? So, yeah, I mean, it's scary for banks, but at the same time, and this is why, like, Santander is, so the banks, there are banks that get it, and people will lose their jobs, but, you know, they'll be freed up with the, it's decentralized money, right?
Right.
And it's hard for regulators around the world to figure out how to regulate it. Like, they really can't at the end of the day. Software platform, but on Ethereum, you can create something called a smart contract, which is a contract you can't go and change the agreement. There's no possible way, once it's locked in. The whole, like, thousands of computers around the world would reject any attempt to go and manipulate the contract, which is going back to one of the problems of dealing with ledger funds and all that. And then all of a sudden, like, somebody doesn't know where the real contracts for mortgages themselves. So with the blockchain, you can also have this smart contract so that you know that contract's always going to be there and no one will be able to change it. There's no way you can change it with the technology.
So are you changed without the person knowing it?
Yeah, that was a big problem.
Wow. But don't you have to sign a contract to make it legal?
Thing, and they pretty much did. You know, and it's like, where do you begin? And, you know, people who have mortgages.
We have decentralization, so it's basically, as you put it, you know, putting the power back into the hands of the owner. And so you're telling me that there's computers all over the world. I mean, where are they housed? I mean, are they housed in sort of like banks or different types of institutions, and how do they communicate?
So the blockchain exists. Right. That's really important. Some people got together and thought it'd be a good idea to hold on to people's money and charge them for it. So, like, people really, the kind of pioneers and diehard believers in crypto and blockchain, I can hold on to it, you know, without you charging me money for my money. Anyway, so
how you know, all these computers all over the world, where are they housed, and how are they communicating?
Okay, so pretty much so, because my friend I have a friend who holds the Bitcoin on this worldwide ledger that allows these financial transactions to happen. Originally started with people who were mining the Bitcoin. So back when Bitcoin first came out and is worth like pennies, people for the ledger and create the Bitcoin.
Okay.
And they get rewards for creating the Bitcoin. So back in the day, anybody who was mining got rewarded crypto for creating crypto. It's like a whole Bitcoin computer, just a computer dedicated to making Bitcoin in his garage. And it doesn't, the media tried to portray. So back in 2017, the media was coming out with all these stories like paid placement, banking manipulation. Like I know very well because I know a lot of people behind the scenes. And the banks were very afraid, convince people not to buy it, was that Bitcoin's bad for the environment. It does take energy to build dollars, euros, because you have to have banks that house the money, you have to have security, and the printing of money is because it's finite. Like it only takes so much energy, and everything will be created. I mean, there's still more Bitcoin, but getting back to the blockchain and or Bitcoin and where it's made. So all these kind of nerdy people making miners at home. I mean, there are now like companies that are like properly kind of making it under a business structure, but these people who are at home who are making the Bitcoin, they hold a copy, like a real-time copy of this worldwide ledger, and it's all connected. There's no segregation. There's no silos. It's like having this ball,
Right?
And they're all plugging into it from different entry points around the world. If that makes sense.
Yeah. So how do you buy Bitcoin? I mean, is it a cash transfer?
Yeah, you can buy Bitcoin with dollars, euros, pounds.
Right.
I mean,
Is that how it started, though? I mean, is that how they made Bitcoin? So basically, they just went around asking for investors, and this risky concept that people didn't understand way back when. Is that sort of how it may have been portrayed?
And they didn't necessarily. It's interesting because it's not like they had a couple VCs come in and put money into it. Pretty much what happened was it was kind of like the underground kind of anarchist movement of it was just a bunch of nerdy people that just start buying it, like nerdy anarchists.
Like small, probably like small amounts, like $1,000 here, $500 there, 10,000 here,
yeah.
That sort of thing.
Yeah, so people just really believed in it, and eventually here we are 10 years later, and enough people believe in it that Bitcoin's now worth about $10,000. Wow. So in 10 years, I know it'll be worth much more with everything that's happening. I mean, it's like even like Fidelity, for example, they're opening up to trading cryptocurrency. It's crazy. So the people who started out in the early days, a lot of them are very wealthy. There's a lot of new wealth in the world just because of Bitcoin.
Because of Bitcoin, right? Wow.
Yeah.
So that's it's interesting because my focus has always been in my profession and as what I do as a plastic and reconstructive surgeon, as a thought leader, as a coach, and that's why I have things like these things as well, these podcasts. One part of my life that I didn't give enough attention to was the finances and the financial sector, and so I never really and I got my hands burned in many years ago when I tried to do some investments, but I didn't have the right psychology, the right mindset, and the right tools, and so I lost a significant amount of money that way because I trusted people. And so looking at these new concepts, I mean, this was a far-fetched concept for me. I mean, let alone the stock market and stuff like that. So all these stories about you waste your money, it's all going to be corrupt, it's all going to go away after a while, and it's not worth it. These were the stories that I heard. And so it's awesome to see that that's not the case. And so somebody looking to cryptocurrency now, how is it that they can get started?
Well, one, I mean, buying on Coinbase is the easiest way to get going, but Bitcoin, is pretty much created most of its millionaires, right? But you have these smaller cryptocurrencies that are within the top 10 to 20 on the market index. where you can go and you can go to this website called coinmarketcap.com, and the like Ripple, that cryptocurrency that's used to send millions of dollars really fast that I told you about, that's right now worth 20 cents a coin. So if you went and put like a couple $100 on Ripple right now, and even, I mean, if Ripple, turns into like another Bitcoin and even turns into like $500 a coin, then you're going to be happy that you bought it today at 20 cents a coin.
Right.
There are a number of those in the top 10 where it's just like, it's not genius at all. It's just like, hey, this is really cheap. And with a lot of Bitcoin people, like they had no idea.
Right.
And all of a sudden, they woke up one day as like, oh, that Bitcoin thing, all of a sudden, like in Europe with cryptocurrency, who about 8 years ago met this young guy who was a part of the team for Ethereum, which is the second largest cryptocurrency in the world. And he was on an airplane and met him, and the guy said, look, I got this thing called cryptocurrency, and we're creating it, my team, it's called Ethereum, and I don't have enough money for legal or accounting right now. And they had a good time chatting on the plane. And so the investor, who was a lawyer and has an accountant friend, was like, yeah, I'll do work trade. And like, so he got all this cryptocurrency given to him when it was worth like less than a penny. Now Ethereum's worth like $200 on any given day, about
Right.
$200 to $500, and he's totally retired. I mean, he retired from his day job, and he never needs to really work again. But he's in blockchain and passionate about it, so he's working on blockchain projects.
So how do you get the valuation of 27 cents with Ripple and 200 for Ethereum? I mean, where does that happen?
Well, I mean, pretty much it's because people buy it. They buy it with their money, and
so it's strictly just like typical markets. It's the demand, and okay. So what actually differentiates then Ripple from Ethereum as far as their product? I mean, why would somebody want Ethereum versus Ripple? I mean, what's the value? What's the real value in the or difference in the real value besides the monetary one?
So Bitcoin is strictly a currency. Ethereum is a currency and a software platform. So Ethereum is used to make blockchain applications.
Okay.
And that's one of the reasons. That's the big reason it's number two, because for the blockchain to come into the world, you have to build the apps, and it's not regular programming because of that authentication and transparency that needs to happen between all the supercomputers. So it's a special kind of coding. And then Ripple's like the banker coin because it's for sending massive transactions rapidly. Ripple went into partnership with, they're making a lot of partnerships, but they went into partnership with Western Union. Like Western Union's going to start using Ripple to send money as well.
So clearly, I mean, there's going to be major wealth transfers, and maybe Ripple will be one of the primary vehicles for that to happen versus, say, Ethereum. Interesting. Yep. So let's change the conversation a little bit and share with us why you're so excited personally and the kind of work that you're doing, because I've known you for a while and you get all excited and you're on an incredible journey, and in that conversation at some point want to talk about the difference between being an American and say European as far as being able to get started into this world of Bitcoin.
Yeah. Well, okay, there's this interesting loop. So I'm super excited about crypto initially because I was sitting in front of a cave in Ireland back in 2017, where my family used to work as slate miners. And I had a moment where I was just kind of praying to my ancestors that I could find something in my life that I could feel passionate about again, and that drive, because I I worked for the UN for 10 years. I was in Nepal, Afghanistan, East Timor, all over the place, Cambodia, and working for similar nonprofits. And it was really frustrating because there was a lack of transparency, and money would go missing. I worked in the UN elections, and ballot boxes would go missing. And I was like, what am I gonna do now? It was really disappointing. There's a lot of it wasn't a free and fair election, which doesn't really exist anyway. But I stopped in the airport in Iceland waiting for a flight, and I got this email from this woman saying, "Hey, I know you do digital marketing. Could you come in?" When I landed in LA, like a day later, and it's like, Bitcoin's that big now. She's like, "Yeah, it's done over 450 billion in transactions over the past 3 months." And I was like, wow. I gotta pay attention now. And then all of a sudden, like, Bitcoin took me for a ride, and I've been actively in the crypto space since then. I felt like that was an answer from my ancestors, from that prayer at the cave. And like, anytime when I kind of want to give up and run away, like something kind of strange and mystical happens, and I'm pulled back into crypto. But the thing is, I'm super excited about crypto because of the taking power back from the banks. One, two, it's creating all this new opportunity for diversity. Like, I see a lot of women and people of color going in to be business owners and to do different things that, I know a lot of women, for example, they never thought they could do trading or talk about finance and all that. But now, like, Bitcoin's giving them this opportunity, and they're like excited, like pouncing on it. So that's exciting. But tying it back to my work in my 20s for the UN and these other nonprofits, because of the blockchain and how it's transparent and it's tamper-proof, is what they say. It's tamper-proof. It's perfect for elections. So, in my head, I'm like, I worked on the UN elections. I saw like all this crazy stuff going on with ballots and the ballot count and missing boxes and corruption and even the threat of terrorism, because Afghanistan has like pretty much no infrastructure. They had to take donkeys with ballot boxes on their backs just to get the ballots out into the remote regions, with like armed Afghan military walking the donkeys through the mountains with the ballot boxes on their back. With the blockchain, because it's tamper-proof and it's digital, you could just set up the voting. You don't even need ballot voting centers practically. You don't need the paper. You don't need the ballot boxes. Like, elections in places like that especially cost billions. Like, they had 25 planes, cargo planes flying back and forth between London and Kabul just to get all the election materials into Kabul that they couldn't make there. Imagine setting up an election on the blockchain. Like, it would cost nothing. It would cost nothing.
But what guarantees do we have that it is tamper-proof? I mean, in this world with, incredible geniuses in the digital world, can't somebody just hack into it?
I mean, there's the Titanic, sure, but no one's managed to hack into it yet, and it's been 10 years. The only thing that people can hack into is websites.
Right.
No one's hacked the blockchain yet, but people hack into websites where people hold Bitcoin. So there's the difference there.
Right.
But the actual blockchain itself has not been hacked. And it's again, it's kind of down to that concept of when you have multiple brains that all have to be in agreement.
Right.
For a transaction to happen. That's why it's really.
So you said something interesting. So people can obviously hack into websites. So let's say Ripple has their website. Somebody could hack into that website. What protection do people have because of the blockchain itself? I mean, is there a protection because of the blockchain with that, or you're still at the mercy of the transaction that happens in the actual private website?
Well, Ripple, the company, doesn't hold its.
Well, as an example, let's say.
So, what can be hacked is if someone has a password for a crypto account, like
right.
like
Well,
an
that's
online
that's
bank.
like with anything. Then I mean, they can just hack into your account and do whatever.
Yeah, but it's very, very hard because now crypto, like you have to have uh, two-factor
Right.
authentication.
Right.
Some people don't flip on the two-factor authentication on some of the crypto sites, and they can get in trouble. But if they have a lot of money, and you're on some of these more complicated websites where you're trading crypto,
Right.
you'll know to put the 2FA on anyway. But Coinbase, for example, makes you do the 2FA. What the scarier thing that can happen is that you're the thing that's happened more is that people like lose their phone for the 2FA, or they forget a password. Like that's a much bigger problem than hacking.
Right.
So you have to, like, when you get crypto, like it's good to have like a backup paper copy of all your passwords, like in a safe, or like
No,
you know, I tell my clients who have kids and they're older, I'm like, I'm sorry, we have to talk about this, but if for some reason you pass away, you have to give someone in your family the information to access, just in case. But there are now products coming out for that specifically, like
Right.
you know, actual companies where you can put your family in there just in case.
So what excites you about it personally? I mean, as far as the work that you're doing, I know you like the fact that it's decentralized, it's a global, it's transparent. You know, we have the power. So what's your focus in this area?
Two things. Like one, right now, like I do placement of investors into cryptocurrency hedge funds, which are doing really well in these days because the ones I work with are using trading algorithms, which means it's robotic trading.
Right.
And the trading algorithms trade better than any human can. So it's kind of rapid fire trading. Like they can do like 100 trades in a minute, you know, stuff like that. So the current like number one product that I'm working with has created 80% gains since January, which survived COVID, which is massive. Like it's not a hard thing to sell.
Right.
The traditional markets went down.
Right.
Is to be expected. But the other thing that's exciting for the long term for me, outside of doing the trading algorithms, is that blockchain technology is now being used to deliver food rations to refugees in places like Syria. So the UN has started doing this along with Oxfam and a few others. What happens is the funding from governments for the refugees will go through, you know, they give it to the UN goes, sets it up on blockchain. What happens is, you know, the funds are sent and the refugees will go to like a food supply, a store, a market, right? And they can do retina recognition for the issuance of funds, and they can program in. So this is kind of the whole idea of the smart contract that I was talking about before. They can program in, these people are only allowed to buy XYZ, you know, so food, beverages, they can't buy alcohol or stupid stuff, right?
Right.
And because it's a retina scan, they never even have to touch the funds. And at the other end, because the money is documented, the crypto is documented the whole way through, you can see everything that happens. The donors know that the funds actually got to the refugees. And that's a massive problem in NGOs and humanitarian efforts, is that, you know, we lose billions every year to who knows where. And like
Right.
people who actually need it don't get it. With crypto, you get the funds, no one can take it out unless it's, you know, what it's programmed for happens.
Right.
Like so-and-so in Syria at the refugee camp gets food. They do the retina scan, they get their food. Like you can
So
track
basic.
it
So
on
basic.
ledger.
Right. So everybody
Yeah.
has to register into the system, obviously, and that's kind of hard to corrupt. unless of course you have like somebody holding a gun to your head and you do that, but then of course you couldn't do that because the other person would see it, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, you
unless,
can't.
yeah, unless of course everybody was in on it at the one location, but still, with the right kind of algorithms, that's just absolutely eliminated. Interesting.
Yeah, and they're using it for food supply now. Like I have a friend who set up something called AgriLedger, which is using cryptocurrency to pay farmers in the backwoods of Haiti. What happens is, in a lot of places, like the farmers that no one sees at the front marketplace in the cities, they get taken and they lose a lot of money, and like the prices are jacked up. They don't know the real prices of the food at the market in the city, and the middlemen screw them over. But with the blockchain, and she put it was funded by the World Bank, and it's actually now working, and the farmers are actually getting like fair pay for their mangoes. They're doing it with the mango project.
So let me ask you this, because what goes through my head right now is that so many people out there, and I have no idea what kind of percentage, but all of us are kind of wired for our own personal survival, however we define that, and so that might be translated into personal greed, at the expense of others, and so this kind of shuts out that entirely from the equation. And so, clearly people who have amassed large sums of money by this kind of unethical behavior have been able to get themselves into power, in a position of power, because, money talks, right? Mm-hmm. So how is there any kind of projection as to how that's going to actually change in the future? Let's take a third world country as an example, where you have these power lords, because of the money that they were able to amass through corruption and bribery and whatever, and torture. Now that's going to be eliminated. What's the landscape going to change like? I mean, have you thought of that?
Yeah, I mean, humans are always going to be humans at the end of the day. And it's not like the perfect end all, like, we found heaven on earth kind of thing. But, once it's implemented, there will be more. I think it will cause, and it already is through even the mango project I was telling you about. It will create a redistribution of wealth,
and power.
Yeah, they're always greedy. Yeah, and power. Yeah, so we could have decentralized government with this, and I think that's going to be probably the hardest piece, is the governments letting it happen. I mean, the Pentagon came out with a report that recently that millennials with Bitcoin are dangerous radicals. Something along those lines. So to beware the people with Bitcoin.
Right. So let me ask you this. I mean, is this the prelude to globalization? And if that's the case, who's in charge?
Well, I mean, globalization has been happening, and I think now, people are fighting globalization, but it's happening regardless. Who's in charge in the world of Bitcoin? I mean, the people holding the crypto are in charge of their money. Will there be politicians in charge? Yeah, I don't think that's going away anytime soon, but I mean, we could see more localized government. But yeah, I'm not really sure. It's hard to imagine, but I see signs of it. Like, for example, I used to travel around Asia in my 20s, and as far as globalization and like a worldwide currency, and I traveled with cash. The UN paid me in cash. It was hard to get bank accounts, so I pretty much didn't have a bank account for most of my 20s. But now, because of products like TransferWise and cryptocurrency, I can travel in a safer way because I don't have thousands of dollars in my pocket.
Right.
That's exciting for me, and I'm pretty much a digital nomad, where like I understand that borders serve a purpose, but like for me, I'm like, borders? What are you talking about? Like, I'm a global citizen. I've got friends everywhere. Like, obviously I don't live in the country where I was born, so I should be able to go where I want and have a global currency, which which really is Bitcoin. So I think for the digital nomadic people, it makes a lot of sense.
Right. So, but I just want to get back to this idea because, I mean, on the one hand, when we talk about globalization, sometimes it seems like you'll have, institutions like the UN, whatever, trying to determine, who gets what. And, that's on the one hand a scary thought. But on the other hand, it almost seems like this decentralization where with this, amount of transparency, it's going to be kind of hard to really hide. The challenge, of course, is, as we see, all over the world, who's got the loudest voice and who's got the loudest threatening voice. And so this is, unfortunate because then you'll have people for all sorts of, let's call it nefarious reasons, are shouting the loudest and dulling the voices of the people that are doing good into fear. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens. My hope is that there's enough people that understand how this decentralization can work effectively, where it's almost kind of what you were suggesting, that at some point, a lot will be governed by the local governments. And in that way, hopefully, right, with more compassion and logic and intellect versus, personal greed, because of that transparency. And so you'll get people in power because of who they are as human beings serving others versus, the power that they actually have. I mean, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it's what I would like to see personally. I mean, I fully believe in that and that it's going to help. But, I think that I do believe that it's coming. And look at COVID and how it made us more localized in a number of ways. So, all of a sudden, I have to get all my food from the farmer's store down the street.
Right.
And I really want to support them, right? Like, I don't want to go to the big, like, food stores and support the, the brands that are making food in other countries and shipping it in.
Right.
So, and I think that with the distrust for big government, with the crumbling of money as we know it, which will happen more and more and more because the fintech revolution is massive, and the potential issues we have with the environment on a global scale, we could see more. Unfortunately, we might see another pandemic in our lifetimes, right?
Oh, we definitely will.
Yeah. So I think that is going to, well, it will topple big centralized government more and more, which is too bad we had to come to this point to figure it out. But
what I find really fascinating is, and I'm not even sure the academics have really caught up because it's such a quickly evolving thing that's happening in the world with, the transfer of so much information very quickly. And when you think about it, there's 7 billion people on the planet, but there's over 9 billion cell phones, which means that people in very remote places, people without the regular kinds of technologies, but they have a cell phone, and we can manage our entire lives on the cell phone. So anybody who wants to start a business, if they have a cell phone, they can do that.
yeah,
And so what's going to be very interesting is how that's